Bitcoin is currently trading around $88,000, and there's a lot of fear going on in the market. And I kind of want to explain what I think is going on and what I think is going to happen next. So if you're not already, make sure you subscribe, smash the like button, turn on bell notifications. Everything I say here is very time sensitive. Now, obviously, we had a huge beat on Nvidia earnings yesterday, and the markets all rebounded. Everything looked really, really good. I saw a lot of people like in my friend group, they're all kind of FOMOing back into the market saying, oh, it's a local bottom, we're going to go higher and all this kind of stuff. And I put out a video cautioning the uncertainty when it comes to these rate cuts, because obviously the whole Nvidia AI bubble, yes, that whole rumor has been put to rest, and that's going to be really reflective on the market, right? Because Nvidia accounts for 7 to 8% of the whole S&P, and so naturally, if that does well, the whole stock market's going to look good. The thing that I was kind of worried about was the bounce on Bitcoin that I put in yesterday was not significant enough. We didn't hit any major levels of resistance that we needed to flip. And I think that today, obviously in the morning, there was a lot of, we had I believe it was an October data jobs report, or it might have been September, sorry. And basically it reflected that the Fed, they don't want to cut interest rates pretty much in December. There's no clear sign to do that. Obviously they have a fear of inflation still kind of running hot, and the jobs reports and all that kind of stuff. It doesn't really indicate that they should be doing anything other than maybe just staying still. And so naturally, that's going to really affect the stock market and crypto market. And I know it's very frustrating for people to, kind of look at, because you see Bitcoin go from, $88,000, bounces up to $93,000, and it goes down to 90, and then so on and so forth. And now we're kind of putting in a new low. It's just very uncertain when it comes to the whole macro environment. And Bitcoin is a very sensitive asset when it comes to liquidity. And obviously we have a lot of outflows when it comes to these spot ETFs. Now, yesterday, I believe, was the first day in 4 days where we had a positive day, but obviously the price action this morning has not reflected that. I still suspect that, we're having a major hole being filled from the October 10th sort of liquidation event. I think that there was a lot of people that lost everything. I think that some exchanges to an extent were also impacted. And so I'm not sure if there's an unwinding going on behind the scenes, but this kind of selling is just not normal in my opinion so quickly. This isn't really what we see in a bear market. Now, obviously there's a possibility that, from a technical standpoint, that yes, we are in a bear market and we're going to go down further, but there's also macro and liquidity sort of arguments that you can make where, obviously if we go into quantitative easing sometime in December, which is supposed to be on December 1st, and if some miraculous thing happens and we end up getting a rate cut for December, that's going to be very bullish. And I think that 2026 is going to be pretty positive in terms of the macro environment. And I think that Bitcoin is more sensitive to that than it would in its traditional cycle. And there's just a lot of arguments that can be made, right? There's a lot of people who are oh, well, we must have been in a bear cycle this whole time because of how Bitcoin and crypto has basically performed, because it hasn't really done much. And so I think that the good news is if we do go into this bearish trend and cycle, I don't think it's going to be as bad, just because the underwhelming price action and just liquidity has been very underwhelming. And so I do think that, the bullish and bearish case, you need to be prepared regardless, right? And I think a lot of people have not mitigated the risk. They haven't taken any profits. And, you're kind of feeling is it too late for me to do so? Because, I'm down on my position and, I don't want to sell at a loss and then watch the price go back, higher. And, I completely understand that. I've been there before. It's very frustrating, and it's almost like an impossible situation, because you never know, right? There's so much uncertainty when it comes to these markets. And so the best thing you can do is just ask yourself the question, what's going to hurt more, watching your stuff go down, 30, 40, 50% from here, or holding on, or selling and then watching it go up, 2x or whatever the case may be. So I'm still kind of of the camp that I think that we still see a short-term relief bounce, something significant, at least up until the low 100s, because, we have to at least put in some sort of lower high before going a lot lower, in my opinion. And I think that, there's just a lot of uncertainty right now. And I think that the market makers and all this, they know this. And so they kind of feed off of this sort of agony that goes on in the market when it's so bad. Not to mention the crypto Twitter timeline has never been worse. We've had the worst sentiment I've seen since basically the FTX collapse. And so, that's usually a sign that something's going to give, right? In terms of putting in a short-term bounce or something like that. I can't imagine that we're just going to go down only. Now, obviously this is not in any way financial advice. I'm not telling you guys to make any kind of trading decisions based on what I'm saying, but it's just, that's what we see in the markets, right? You never see a straight down. Just the way that markets can't just only go up, they cannot just go only down. So, there's, again, to wrap up, there's just a lot of uncertainty. And if you're somebody that is, way overly exposed and you're kind of confused on what's going on, I would just kind of caution you to make a plan that's going to make the most amount of sense for you. I'm going to update you guys with, hitting key levels, because I do think the short term, I think that if we can hold above $85,000, I think that would be short term okay. And if we lose that very quickly, then I would be pretty concerned that we're probably going to go test the monthly, basically the monthly bullish trend, which is around $75,000. And that might come quick if we lose $85,000 short term. And also on the upside, if we can somehow get above like $98,000 and at least bounce off of that and keep that as support, then that would be a short-term good sign. And I think that would open the door for us hitting around 105 to 106 relatively quickly as well. So that's my bullish and bearish case. If you have any questions or concerns, drop them in the comment section. I'll be monitoring them. And as always, trade safely, guys. Bye.